What's up guys, Cliff from the Sunday Drive. Today we're going to be showing how to install a B58 charge pipe in this G30 540. All right, so we're upgrading the charge pipe on this G30 behind me with the B58 motor. This is the 540 model. And the reason you want to upgrade your charge pipe is the stock one is plastic, it's brittle, it breaks over time. Even if you don't plan to tune the vehicle and you're leaving it otherwise completely stock, this is a worthwhile upgrade to keep you from being stranded on the road. We've seen numerous charge pipes fail over the years, and almost always it's due to age, not to tuning, although tuning does add additional stress on those already brittle and plastic components. As always, we get our parts through Keys Motorsports. We'll be sure to have the links to all the parts and tools used in this video down in the description, and when you do go through those links, it really helps us out. And if you have any comments or questions or are interested in this install on your vehicle, be sure to shoot us an email, and we'll have our email contact down in the description as well. All right, with that, let's get started. Just pull the cover off, just pops up, very easy. For this installation, the airbox will have to come out, so if you plan to upgrade your airbox, it's a great idea to do it at the same time since you're already removing it. You have to remove this plastic shield up front here. It's held in by a whole bunch of push pins, so you need a pry tool like this. You pop the center of the pin out, if you can get under it, and then that releases the clips so that you can get under there. And I'm going to remove this one. Open up. And this is clipped into this weather stripping up front here as well. Okay. Now we're going to remove this support brace. It's held in by two bolts. One is a 16 millimeter and the other one is an E14. I like to break everything free by hand before using any power tools. Next, disconnect the mass airflow sensor. It's a two-part clip. So there's this white part you have to push back. If it's tight, you can use a screwdriver like I just did and twist, and that'll open it up. And then you can push down and pull it off. If for some reason it is stuck and not wanting to come off, you can take a pick tool like this from the front, lift up on the clip, and then pull off. Now this convoluted thing is all part of your airbox system. You can remove this all as one piece. There is a clamp just like this one down here, about like 6 inches lower, and you are able to get on it with the right extensions and like a wobble socket and loosen it. But because of how tight the rubber is and the metal, even when you loosen this, it really is hard to release this middle rubberized portion of your intake. So what we ended up doing is removing a T25 from right here. And then this whole air intake box will pop out. It's held in by a whole bunch of rubber grommets at the bottom, which we'll show you in a second. And then it's connected to a front air intake duct right down here, which I'll show that a little bit better once it's out. And that has clips on both sides. We went down with a flathead screwdriver and released those clips. So you can see the three reddish orange rubber grommets. 1, 2, 3, that's what holds the airbox in. And then here's that front duct piece, and here are the clips on either side. They go around the airbox. So if you slide a thin screwdriver in on either side, you can get those to release. Now, if you look down here, you can see that other clamp that I was mentioning earlier. You can see that we did fully loosen it, but because it is so kind of embedded into the rubber, it only released in the one spot rather than evenly releasing around the whole air hose. So unfortunately, it didn't let us pull this all off, but now we have very easy access to that to pull the rest of the intake off. All right, so getting this rubber to disconnect from the lower inlet into the turbo has been an absolute bear. We tried going from the outside to get it to release, but what I found worked the best was taking something like this, doesn't have a sharp edge, so it's not gonna tear anything, and going down on the inside, in between where the plastic inlet meets this rubber coupling. I went all the way around the edge, basically broke the seal. Even though it's fully loose on the inside, or from the clamp, it was still sealed to that pipe. And once I broke that free, I was able to work it the rest of the way off. This back piece is held in by grommets, just like the front air intake box. So It's free. So that was enjoyable. But basically it had some oil and stuff in here, and just that is making a really tight seal. Once it's clamped down, heated and cooled multiple times, it really seals itself to that plastic piece. So that can be a little more challenging than you might expect. All right, so next we need to start releasing some of these peripherals around the charge pipes. We have this connection right here. These can be fun to get out as well. It has two sides you squeeze, so you're gonna squeeze this side and then the other side on the inside, and then these two parts will release. So these do take a good bit of force, and they can be brittle with age, so be careful. We got that released right there. And then it's connected up here. Not 100% necessary to release this one, but I'm just gonna do it to give us a little more freedom of movement. So we stopped filming for a second because I needed someone to pull on this while the other person squeezed with kind of both hands and all their strength to release this. But now that that is done, I'm gonna go over here and just pop this out of this clip right here, like that. And that'll give you a lot of play down here. We're gonna disconnect both these electrical connections, and we'll even get a little bit more play out of this. All right, so two electrical connections that go into the charge pipe. Again, just gonna take a flathead screwdriver and twist to release, and twist very gently, and release, and then squeeze. And that one is not pulling off, so I'm gonna do my pick tool method and go in from underneath and release. Take a little bit of playing and pull off. Off camera, release the clip on this one, like all the rest. It's a pain, but with the top portion of this removed, you're able to get around it a little bit better and release it. Just be careful with all these hard lines, especially if you're working on an older BMW. This one's 2017, so it's still pretty new, but even on 4, 5, 6-year-old cars, a lot of times these lines are extremely brittle and will break. So if you're worried about breaking them, sometimes it's good to have extra ones on hand just to be safe. All right, now we are gonna remove the inlet. So this line does go down into it. So we're gonna release that clip up here. It's the same style, just bigger. So with this one, I'm gonna just gently release it with some pick tools. But you gotta do it carefully. You don't wanna overstretch it, because then you can break it. Now you'll notice that this line right here is pretty tight. It's just held on by a little bracket that goes around this PCV line up here. We're gonna disconnect two of these electrical connections, this one right here and the one on the wastegate. So carefully unbutton this heat shielding that's around your wastegate. It's held by some buttons. Okay. Now you have access to that same style clip as everywhere else. Use a screwdriver. Pick tool to release. And then just pull that back. There's not a lot of slack on that. Screwdriver to release. And that one I was able to squeeze. All right, now I'm just gonna remove that from around this line carefully. And now it's pretty loose and we should be able to work around it. There is one more clip held into the inlet right down here, so I'm gonna pry that off. Okay, now that's much looser. And now we can go ahead and remove the inlet. All right, go ahead. Now the inlet is held onto the turbo with this clip right here, this metal clip that I just snuck the pick tool through. So we're gonna open that up. Now that I've opened it a little bit, I'm gonna take a little bit bigger of a pry tool. Oh, let's open that again. All right. Put that under there. You should be able to just, not a lot of room, but you should be able to pry it up like that. And once it's locked in that position, you can pull the inlet out like so. So basically the way this clip works, it has a unlocked and locked position. So this is the unlocked position. You can also fully remove it. Usually that's what will end up happening, but when it's in the locked position, it sits like that, and these 3 points hold it into a groove on the turbo. And this same style connection is holding your lower part of your charge pipe on as well. Now you can see the metal clip right here. It's the same style clip as the inlet, but it has this black plastic protective sleeve on it. It is possible to actually remove the charge pipe without removing this black sleeve. However, since we do not need to reuse it, I usually just break it off because it makes the whole process a lot easier. If you just stick a tool under there, you can snap the one end. And then if you take your hand underneath, you can break it off the rest of the way. Now this clip, I'm just gonna actually get my hand under there and lift it up and push it to the side so it's no longer locked. I'm gonna do the same on the bottom. And hopefully wiggle it out. So just like with the inlet, there's 3 points of contact. So I have the bottom 2 points of contact released, but the top middle point is not. So it's being a little bit tricky. So I'm gonna hold on to it so it doesn't go flying, but I'm gonna pry it out with a tool, if I can. Now the charge pipe will slide a little bit, there's some play, so sometimes it might either be pushed on too far or not enough, and that might be preventing the clip from coming out fully. So there's the bottom clip on the charge pipe removed. Again, 3 points of contact, and just this one was being a little bit tough, and I'll show you why this part's a little bit harder to get out when I have the charge pipe out. All right, now we can remove the upper part of the charge pipe. It's held in by 3 T30 screws or bolts. There's 2 up top and 1 directly below it. Now, if you want a little bit easier access to that one, you could move this bar. However, they're not held in that tight, and I was able to get it broken free. Pull it off of the turbo. Now it can be a little bit of a juggling act to get it out of here. Just take your time with it. And there you go. There's the stock charge pipe removed. All right, so here's that stock charge pipe removed, and the reason I was having trouble with this clip is normally it's sitting down in there. So you don't have to just pull it straight out, you actually have to push it over and then get it to come out. So that's why there's a little bit of a challenge to get that middle part out of the stock charge pipe. All right, so here's the old charge pipe compared to the new one. You can see the 2 plastic sections are being replaced by metal, and then there is a silicone coupler that will join them in the middle. Let's transfer over these sensors. So first I'm going to transfer over this one right here. It's held in by a 17 millimeter, but it needs to be a 12 point. So make sure you have a 12 point. It's not very tight at all. All right, put that over into the new one right here. I'm just going to give it a tiny, ever so slight turn. And the one thing you want to make sure you don't do is don't go down too far, because you will scratch the top of your charge pipe. Make sure that when you're doing it, you keep the socket just on the sensor. So again, just an ever so slight turn just to make sure it's snug, but definitely do not over tighten that. Remove this sensor with a T20. You will not be reusing the T20. The new charge pipe comes with new mounting hardware for this. Just wiggle that out. The new screw is a 5 millimeter. Make sure it's fully seated. And then again, you don't need to overdo this. This is a plastic sensor, so you don't want to tighten it too much where you would crack it. Okay. Now, one last step I always like to do is go ahead and double check that this bung is fully tightened, as well as the two right up here by the throttle body. You don't want one of these rattling loose, then you have a boost leak. Now, the one nice thing about these is if you're ever gonna run meth in the future, you already have several bung options that you can choose from. All right, so I'm gonna take a little bit of silicone paste, just put it in here. You don't need to go crazy with this, but it will help make the install a little bit easier. All right. Now what I like to do is pre-install this on the bottom part of the charge pipe. Don't forget your clamp first. And you're gonna wanna consider where this is gonna line up so that you have easy access to screw once it's in. So I'm gonna put it out this way so I know that I can get to that from the front of the motor pretty easily. I'm gonna slide this on. As you can see, this is pretty snug, so I move that down. That's why silicone paste comes in handy. All right. All right, so I'm gonna get it roughly in place, and I'm gonna get this a little bit snug, but I'm not gonna overdo it because there's a good chance I'm gonna have to adjust this again once it's on the car. All right, so again, considering my alignment, I want this facing up like that. Roughly, all right. So we're gonna go put this on and then we'll install the top part with it. All right, so always make sure you have a gasket in here. The FTP charge pipe comes with a new gasket for the lower portion. Make sure that's in there. It also includes a brand new clip, so you don't have to worry about reusing that old one. You can kind of put it here, but it doesn't really have a locking position like the OEM one does, so I'm just gonna pull it fully off. And we are gonna put this down here. And the nice thing about it being two pieces, you have a lot more maneuverability with it. All right, now if this does give you trouble getting onto the turbo, you can put a little silicone paste down there as well, but as you can see, that popped right off. Now you can go ahead and pop on your clip. And just make sure it goes all the way around, feel for it. And then just, it will be a little bit wiggly like that, that is normal, but just make sure you can't pull it off. All right, very good. They do not include a new gasket here. We normally reuse this, but if you do want to, you could replace this. Make sure your clamp is installed in a good orientation. This top one's a little harder to get to, so I'm gonna put it right about like that. All right, so we're gonna go right here, and we're gonna slide that into that coupler. All right. Make sure the clamp is loose enough. There's not gonna be a problem for you. And gotta get it under that line there. All right. Popped it in, and we're pretty much lined up right there. Now, what I like to do is snug this up first before tightening the center clamp, because if you tighten this and it's slightly off here, that's gonna make getting these bolts in a lot harder. Now, they do include new hardware for here, so don't reuse the old ones. We're gonna give you new ones. These are 5mm hex bolts, so just get those started. And you want to get all of these bolts started before you tighten any of them up, just to make sure everything's lined up. All right, a rounded end Allen key actually works really good here to make sure you're not scratching up your pipe. And you always want to start these by hand for sure, because it's easy to get this started wrong. You can see what I'm having to do is like, that's wanting to push down, so I'm having to press down here, and that's why you don't want to tighten that center coupling until all of these are nice and snug. All right, so I got the top two started, so the bottom one should be lined up and just ready to go. So I will say leaving this bar in here is definitely a little bit annoying, so it can obviously be done with it still in there, but it might be worth just pulling out as quick as it is when you go to do this install yourself. All right, so one thing I want to note is the clamps, and in hindsight, I probably should have had this one flipped around so that it was facing the same direction as this, but it does provide really easy access straight down right there. But you want to make sure when you're tightening this coupling that the grommet is on both charge pipes fully. You don't want it on just a little bit where you think you have it fully secure and over time it's gonna come loose. So this bottom charge pipe actually comes up to probably about right here. There's only maybe about a 1/2 inch gap between the two charge pipes once they're installed. And you never have to worry about the charge pipe coming too far up. So you definitely want to make sure you have a nice tight grip here. The end of the charge pipes have a little bit of a ridge to prevent it from sliding down. You can kind of feel that with your finger. So pull it up where you have a nice overlap. You want to be probably about that much on the upper charge pipe. And then on the bottom one, again, same amount, and then you should be good to go. So just make sure you have a nice even seat on both charge pipes. All right, so that's the installation of the charge pipe complete. We got to put the stock airbox back in, reconnect all our connections, and then this job is done. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Any comments or questions, definitely hit us up. We'll have our contact info down below. Again, parts and tools down in the description. We're also going to be installing a Dorsch Stage 2 fuel pump on this car, so that video will be coming up at some time in the future, so definitely check that out. And that's it, guys. Thanks for watching.